What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew Subaru. I'm still in the healing process. I'm walking on my foot, but I can't sit a lot of weight on it for a long time, and it's really hard to bend my ankle. But I'm going to attempt to stab the RB into the S chassis. Doing it alone might be a little bit of a challenge, and I don't know how much bigger it actually is going to be to fit in there. So it's going to be a lot of kind of just testing and trying to get it to go, and then once it gets close to the mounts and the bolts go through. Mentioning bolts, I've kind of come to realize I never bought grade 8 bolts for the mounting brackets yet, so I guess before I get started I'm going to run out and get those, and then I'm going to come back, start trying to hook up the motor. And I mean, it's a little bit dark over there, but at least try and hook up the motor, kind of get it pulled out a little bit, maybe get it swung around so that the crane's back there and the engine's up front, and then just lift the transmission over to the front, get it on, put all the bell bolts in, get it all fastened into place. Probably trying to angle the engine so that the tranny really hangs down quite a bit, so I can get it to actually dive down into the car and get a service jack underneath the transmission, start lifting it so the whole thing can kind of tilt down in there. I don't know how it's going to go, so you're just going to have to be patient with me and see what the video ends up turning out like. Hopefully by the end of this video the engine's in there. So I'm going to run out quickly. I'm going to get some grade 8 bolts for those brackets, just because I guess whatever happened this week with the injury or whatever, I've completely forgot about it. And then once I get those, I'll come back, bolt those brackets up. Okay, so I've gotten back from getting some hardware. I got my grade 8 bolts. I went for 7/16. They do drop through the bracket holes and are nice and tight. I'm just hoping that these washers should be small enough so I can get both of them side by side. And I've got some lock washers and grade 8 bolt or nuts as well. So those are going to be bolted really tight and really strong. I don't see having to weld it even at 300 horsepower, but yeah. So I'm going to bolt these on. It is pretty cold out here in the garage this morning, so I actually got my little propane heater going. The line that goes all the way outside, it tends to build up with a little bit of residue inside the line, and it'll prevent flow happening. So basically I take off the line, I undo the little Schrader valve that's inside the line, and just blow compressed air through the line back and forth, wipe off the ends, hook it all back up. Took a while to get the gas to come through the little heater, but as soon as it lights up, of course I sprayed all the dust off of it because it hasn't been on for like over a year, and the thing lights right up. Like, it's an awesome little heater. So I mean, I'm only going to run it for a little while just to kind of heat up the general area, and then I'll probably shut it off because I don't really need it, and the sun's coming out. It'll probably heat up the garage a little bit anyway. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bolt on the brackets, and then basically start slinging up the engine. Okay, so relatively easy enough. I had to take my carbide bit and just kind of grind out where the mounts go to the subframe or the brackets. The bolts, probably just about a millimeter, you know, just a few thou anyway, and trimmed out of the front because the assembly gets moved forward, and I figured, well, it'd be better if it moved forward than backward. But yeah, these bolts, grade 8, these brackets are not going anywhere. If the motor is to shear off, it'll probably happen at the single bolt or tear the bracket or something. I mean, to be able to have that much power and rip those brackets, it's not going to happen. The bolts that hold the mounts for the motor are not the grade that I would like to use. They're metric 8.8s. Ideally they would be 12.8s because they are quite long and it's just single bolts. I'm going to use them for now, and if I have to change them out later, I will. They're kind of long, and to be able to go to the place that I'm getting my hardware, they may have a grade 8 bolt in that length and size, but I'm not gonna run back out today to go do it. So aside from that, I got the post set in for my battery cable. These were cheap on Amazon. I get a pair. There's a red one that's kind of pink in color, and the black one. I just decided I'd use the black one because I'm trying to black out underneath the hood. More than likely, I'm going to have Luma over top of this cable just to give it some extra protection anyway. So it's not going to be red. It's going to end up being black. Then I can take my fuse panel connections and put them down on there as well. I'm either going to get bigger eyelets or open these up slightly because they'll just go down on top of the thread of the post, but they won't go down on it. So, but yeah, I'm at the point I'm ready to start pulling the engine out and trying to get the transmission on. So I'm just going to kind of set up the camera and go through another time lapse, and probably break up the time lapse quite a bit as the engine's hopefully going in. And if I have any problems or I run into an issue, I'll just stop and let you guys know what's going on.
In the middle of the night.
So here it is the following day, following morning. Earlier today, if you're watching this video on the day it came out, I spent all day yesterday trying to get this thing in there. I know the time lapse doesn't make it seem like it took me very long to get it in there. It went pretty straightforward. And I would say for the most part it did. You know, obviously if my foot was a little better, I might have been moving around a little easier. If I had a, you know, bigger garage, higher ceiling without a light in the way, you know, there's a bunch of factors that would have made the job a little easier to do. But I'll tell you straight up, this thing is not easy to get into the engine bay. A load leveler, which is just basically a bar with the swivel hook, and you're able to adjust it along the bar, and you sling that on the crane. A load leveler may have been able to get me to tilt in a little bit further, but realistically, the engine is that much bigger. It's not a whole lot bigger, but it's that much bigger, and the top of the transmission of the bell housing is a little bigger. And those little things just make it that much tighter to actually get in. The KA coming out with the transmission is relatively tight on its own. And just working back and forth with the transmission, with this jack underneath the transmission and the crane in the front and wrestling it a little bit. It took me a while, but realistically, once it kind of got past the crossmember and past the steering rack, I did have to unbolt the sway bar and lower it down just to make it not rest on the oil pan, so I could get it into place. The mounts were relatively close, and I just stuck the solid mount in, dropped the bolt, and kept on shoving it till I could feel the bolt head, or the starting of the bolt coming through the mount or the mounting bracket, and then dropped it through, put a bolt, and put the nut on the other side really quick. Once I had the one side, some good shakes and a little pushing on the transmission, and the other side lined right up, and I was able to put the bolt in there. As you'll see in the footage, or you may have noticed, I don't know, it's pretty fast, right? I almost lost it. I kind of decided to rest it on the rad support, which isn't the greatest idea. It's pretty thin, and I know I bent it a little bit. But the hook came off the side bracket down on this side, and luckily I was standing on that side, because the thing probably would have just rolled over. I mean, the crane would have held it up, but it might have rolled over into the headlamp cover or whatever. And anyways, it tore my shirt, and then later on the night I realized I've got 2 almost scrape marks going down my belly. So this is not ideal to do alone. I don't recommend doing that kind of thing. Even working alone, if you're inexperienced, a lot of times doing stuff is not a good idea. If you get trapped under something and you don't have your phone near you and you can't yell for somebody, you're going to be in trouble. So the fit overall, it's realistically pretty amazing how well it does fit. Now the transmission crossmember isn't in, and I was going to put it in last night, and I decided no, I'll leave it for this morning. And now I've come out this morning. It was really chill out here. I've run the heater for quite a while, and I'm just thinking my foot's still in too much pain. I'm not going to bother. I have it well braced up. There's a couple blocks of wood and then a great big piece of pipe that I use for holding stuff, and it's all sitting on top of that. It's not going to go anywhere. The 2 front mounts actually have the bolts in, but it's pretty tight along the back, alongside the firewall. I think it's going to tilt down a little bit more when I get the transmission in place. The front mounts that one's almost tight, but I realize it's got to tilt down a little bit more. This is sitting way too high for the hood to close, I think. So I'm expecting it's gonna have to tilt, and I think when it does, it'll give a little bit more clearance in the back. But I'm going to grab the camera and we'll kind of walk around just so you guys can get a better look, and then I'll probably close out after that because this is probably getting to be quite a long video now. But yeah, this is basically a 31-year-old engine in a 30-year-old chassis. So there's really only one change that I can see I'm probably going to have to make, and that is the power steering reservoir. It's just too low, I think, because of the pump sitting here. I mean, the drain's going to work, but I just don't know how the fluid's going to be up to here and the pump's down here. So it might work where it is, but it's a little close to the turbo. This line's going to attach relatively close to the wastegate actuator, although the thing is solid mounted. The engine is not going to budge. There might be a couple thou of rattle up here or something like that, but so I probably have clearance, but to drill more holes and to remount that, I'm not so sure I'm going to, so it might just stay there. And you can see I've got on the silicone elbow that I found. I think it's like 2 1/4 or 2 1/2 up to 3 inch, and then I do have another piece in case I need to angle it some more, and I have some 3 inch pipe, so it won't try and collapse if it starts sucking that hard. Of course, the intercooler stuff, I presume it's got to cut through here and go down through here, but I'm really waiting off to see that. On this side, I mean, things are getting tighter, but there's still lots of room. Easily reach down at the oil filter. The starter connections are right there, not very far at all. The one issue I can see on this side is those heater hose connections are underneath the intake here, and they'll have to kind of loop up and around to the heater core. The electrical is going to be relatively easy to clean up as soon as it goes through the firewall. The factory brake booster hose basically going to connect to the intake down here somewhere, probably right on this port. So I mean, everything's pretty straightforward on this side. The fuel filter, I'm going to have to try and reposition that. Obviously, my idea for that was to have it up here somewhere. I guess it still could be there, but the lines will just be way too long. So it might get mounted a little bit lower, even underneath the battery connection down on the frame there, or the boxed end of the unibody, and then have the lines come up like that. The positive battery post, if I was to use it as a jumping lead, you have to be extra careful, obviously, putting in a positive lead down into there. But I presume, that's just not something I'm going to end up using it for, and it'll probably be covered over anyway. There is plenty of room in the front, obviously. The rad is going to stick out a little bit here. It's going to be quite close, and I really have to think of how these slim fans are going to end up fitting in there. Maybe try and look at someone else's setup. But I mean, take out the fans and the rad. There's plenty of room to do a timing belt job in the car. It's not even going to be an issue. Even getting the crank pulley off, I mean, if you pull the front of the car off, you can get right to it so easily. So I think it's been about a year. I'm not quite sure exactly. I think it was late October or November of last year when I pulled this car in, and I had all the intentions of pulling the engine out and putting the RB in over the winter. But I got tied up doing other things, and obviously it didn't take me very long to do this. It's just the preparation and the planning, having all the other little parts that you need to have it all done. Realistically, how is I going to drill the holes for this when you can't get a drill down in there? But it's finally in there. The biggest part of the job is probably over. The wiring is obviously going to be a huge thing. but I do have, I've got time off. I'm taking a little vacation, and I won't be back for a little while until I start into that kind of stuff. But I should have a video before I end up going away, and it's just to kind of give you a little preview of something that I ended up buying. And if you guys checked out my Instagram, then you've seen it. So just go check out @HomebrewSubaru on Instagram, and you will get a little preview of what's coming up. Aside from all that, I'm tired today and I have to edit this video, so I'm gonna end it here. And yeah, I'm glad I got like half of my garage back finally. Anyways, if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here and you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below, and I'll see you in the next one.